Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to be discussing the differences between American English versus British English. There are many Englishes in the world, brought from its homeland, the British Isles, to different parts of the globe. The English language has developed specific feature in each of the areas where it has come to be used. Variety of English differ considerably, but in spite of these, all the varieties still remain essentially one language. The English language varies even in its homeland. The differences between British English, Irish English, Scottish English have become the basis of a few jokes. Here are some of them. Englishman. I'll never forget my feelings the first time I had breakfast in America, when the waitress leaned over my shoulder and whispered in my ear, "Are you through with the cereal?" It was some time before I discovered that she meant, "Have you finished your porridge?" American. While shortly after I landed in England, a waiter came up to me at luncheon and said, "How did you find your chop, sir?" I replied, "Oh, I looked behind the potato and there it was," before I understood that he was asking me how I like it. Scotsman. That's nothing to what happened to me once. I was lodging in a small town in the west of Ireland. Half an hour after I had finished my supper, an exceedingly pretty girl came into my room and said, "Will I strip now, sir?" I fled into my bedroom and locked the door. But I found out afterwards that Irish girls always talk about sweeping the table when they meant clearing dishes away. American traveller to hall porter of an Irish country hotel. "How many meals a day are there in this hotel?" he asked. And the hall porter replied, "Three, sir, breakfast, dinner, and tea." Today, British English and American English are two major varieties of English. Bernard Shaw once said that America and England were two great nations separated by the same language. The differences between English and American English have long served as the basis of jokes. Speakers of a particular regional variety of the English language usually take a humorous stand towards form of speech differing from their own. Thus, speakers of American English can perceive with a smile the peculiar phonetic of a speaker of a British English. Now we come to the joke based on the peculiarities of a British English and American English. British English. When Gypsy Rose Lee, an American burlesque entertainer, actress, and playwright, heard that a detective novel, G-String Murders, was going to be published in London, she wired a publisher, "Who is going to make the English translation?" The British ambassador walked briskly into the foyer of a Washington hotel and stopped for a moment to speak with one of the bright-buttoned servitors in the lobby. After he walked out, an assistant manager who had noticed the incident went over to the boy and said, "What did the ambassador want?" "I don't know," answered the bellop. He couldn't speak English. On the morning of an important recital in London, a famous American violinist stopped in at a small Leicester Square shop and asked the girl for any string. "Yes, sir," she replied dubiously, and disappeared for several minutes. When she returned, she had in her hand a box full of assorted pieces of cord, string, and old rubber ends. "Here, sir," she said, "you pick it yourself." "I can't tell the bloody E-strings from the she-strings," he replied. An American in London was having a terrible time with his pronunciation. It was bad enough to learn that oysters was pronounced Hoster, and that Chamberlain was spelled out as Cholmondeley. Then he saw a marquee on a picture house. It read, "A revival of a cavalcade pronounced success." "That settles it," said the American. "I'm going home." American English. A shop worker in a large London store was asked by an American lady if he could supply two starter and a catcher. Uncertain as to what they were, but too proud to admit that his store might not know of them, he said, "Certainly, madam, if you will leave your name and address, we will send them round." She did so. Enquired by the shop worker on all floors failed to trace these articles, and the managing director himself could throw no light upon them. However, when at lunch he spotted a friend who had lived in America and immediately asked him. "Oh, yes," said the friend, "I know them. Starters are the pads of our ladies who have a very little. Use to pad out their own, and a catcher is a hairnet to keep it all in place." Upon his return from lunch, the managing director told the shop worker that he had heard, and the shop worker was clearly staggered. "Good heavens!" he exclaimed. "I thought the thing out for myself, and I've already sent round to Seidlitz powders and a better pen." The following conversation took place between a visiting American and an Eton schoolmaster. "Do you allow your boy to smoke?" the American asked. "I'm afraid not," was the reply. "Can they drink?" "Good gracious, no." "What about dates?" "Oh, that's quite all right," said the master, "as long as they don't eat too many." Professor Einstein was fascinated by American slang. He listened carefully 3 times to the story of the employer who told his secretary, "There are 2 words I must ask you never to use in my presence. One of them is loosey, the other is swell." "That's all right by me," said the secretary. "What are the 2 words?" When he finally comprehended, the professor threw back his head and roared with laughter. In conclusion, I want to tell you a story, and this story is by George Bernard Shaw, and it's about the differences between America and England as a common language. A couple flew from London to Los Angeles, where they want to spend 3 days. They decide to borrow a car and drove to Las Vegas. On the way, the car needed fuel, and they stopped at a petrol station. As an attendant came up and said, "Yes, can I help you?" The driver asked, "Yes, please. Could you fill it up with petrol, please?" "Petrol," said the attendant. "What is petrol? We don't say petrol here. We say gasoline. We call it gasoline." The driver's wife was a bit hard of hearing, and she said, "What did he say, dear?" The driver replied, "He says that they don't call petrol here, they say gasoline." "Oh," replied his wife. When he finished filling up, the attendant says, "Is there anything else can I help you with?" "Yes, as a matter of fact, we got a hole in our exhaust pipe," replied the driver. "What is exhaust pipe?" Oh, no, we don't say exhaust pipe here, we say muffler." "Of course, we can solve it helpfully," added the attendant. The wife asked, "What did he say, dear?" The driver replied, "He says they don't say exhaust pipe here, they say muffler." "Oh," exclaimed his wife. When the attendant finished to repair the muffler, he came again, gave the bill, and asked, "By the way, guy, where are you from?" "We are from England," replied the driver. "England? Oh, I was in the American Army over England, and I experienced my worst shag ever in my life." The driver's wife says, "Did he say, dear?" And the driver replied, "He says that he thinks he knows you." And this is the story. Thank you for watching. See you next time.